Do you have questions? Okay.
This is just beautiful.
Scott says, last week you said something like in quantum nothing is continuous. Hopefully I got that correct. Could you elaborate a little more so that a layman like myself could understand? You said something about spin. No, I didn't say anything about spin. Somebody else did. He said, I'm not a scientist, but I'm fascinated at science's ability to accurately explain phenomenal experience and the consciousness-only model of reality. That said, scientific understanding is not necessary for me to continue to rewire the ways that I perceive, since I know from my experience that consciousness is real. Yes, exactly. The point I was making is that we think that perceptions are continuous. We think that thoughts are continuous. And the point I was trying to make is that this continuity is, in fact, an illusion for two reasons. For instance, one, if we talk about perceptions, because perceptions is ultimately processes by the brain, by neurons, and neurons either they fire or they don't. In other words, it's a binary process. So each neuron, either it fires or it doesn't. We have a limited amount of neurons, meaning that ultimately everything we perceive, depending on the firing or not firing of these individual neurons, is discrete, is not continuous. More so even, at a more microscopic level, what we perceive is a constant creation and annihilation of particles out of the vacuum, and that also are discrete processes. In other words, either we are at 0-point energy level, 1/2 of h bar omega, or we jack it up, and then there is this creation of a particle at the next energy level. So it's yes or no. created or annihilated. So everything we see is discrete somehow. But I'm not attached to that. That's what I was trying to explain, because the real continuity belongs to the underlying reality, to that which is behind the appearances. And that's that which is really always there. And in fact, it is also beyond time. Time arises out of there. But that's a different story. Divya, if I am universal consciousness, I have no needs at all. I don't care if I have this experience or not. And while I am sticking to universal consciousness identity, I don't care. I am carefree. I don't care at all. Thank you, Divya. Okay, that's not a question. Gabriel, my modest understanding of the nature of this illusory material universe comes from your words and Rupert's. As far as I have been able to grasp, everything seems to be infinite awareness experiencing itself. This is my question, please. As colorful, fascinating, and diverse as everything might appear to us, what is the meaning of it all, if any? I mean, why does everything that surrounds us exist, appear to us? I mean, should there be a reason for everything? I mean, this utilitarian view of things, that everything should be useful, should fulfill a purpose. I mean, it's boring. Everything which is useful is boring. That which is fun is that which is not useful. What is the usefulness of playing tennis? And as a kid, what was the use? As a kid, that which was fun was that which was useless. Studying towards a profession which was useful looked boring, right? Compared to playing football or basketball or whatever, which was useless unless you wanted to be a professional basketball player, which in my case was not really a good idea. Then he goes on, just today I saw a brief interview to dear Feynman about the impossibility of answering to whys. So what is the point of us being inclined to think, elude ourselves? We are separate entities, are perceiving all these things, etc. Or in other words, what is the point of infinite awareness to manifest, to masquerade into separate entities as objects, etc.? Why this illusion? Why this sleight of hand? I'm not even sure the answer should matter, but I still feel compelled to ask. But why ask about why? Why the why? And why the why about the why? This why makes an assumption that perhaps you don't realize that you are making an assumption, but in the question why, there is an implicit assumption, which is that there is a cause and there is the effect. Why A because B. So in order for the question why to make sense, the cause and the effect have to be different. Therefore, there is duality. Otherwise, if there is no duality, the question why doesn't make sense. Because the cause is in the effect and the effect is in the cause. So the question, why A? The answer is because A. You know, if the effect is in the cause, the answer is why A, because A is ultimately the same reality. So, well, regarding Feynman, great guy, with his diagram and with his what is it called? The integral, the integration on all the possible paths. Divya, are offering a sensation to space or painting everything with sensations ways to experience that sensations are not localized to the body? Yes, I can see it logically that it can help see that body is not as solid as I take it to be. I feel a sense of peace and of joy when I try these experiments. I tried it today at the local coffee shop and it was fun. Is there an endpoint for this type of experiments? Yet, when it gets boring, stop doing it. Should I keep doing them till I no longer feel strongly identified or localized? Yeah, at some point, yes, exactly. At some point, you feel that you are the space rather than the objects in the space. That's one way to define it. At which point you are not localized here. Interesting, there is a merge that takes place because you can see consciousness as a space and you can see physical space as a different space. And in fact, both merge. There is one single space experientially. Intellectually, there are several spaces. There is a space of mind, there is this physical space. There is subtle space, the space where the thoughts take place, and there is physical space, the space of the world takes place. But these distinctions are intellectual. Experientially, there is only one space. So we inadvertently take our concept of space to be real, and our experience of space, we forget it. So we adjust rather to our concepts, to the models we have, than to our experience. So here we do the reverse. We go back from the conceptual spaces to the experiential space, which is one. Why are we allowed to do that? Because we are open to the possibility that this space, consciousness, is the reality of everything. Both everything subtle and everything physical. What is the experience of delocalization? How useful is this experience for experiencing that I am consciousness only? I can see logically to say 90% certain that I am consciousness only. I'm not sure if I have experienced it. What experiment can I do to be open to the experience that I am consciousness only? I mean, there are different questions. What is the experience of delocalization? I don't know what you mean by delocalization. Something would be different, which is the experience of non-localization, right? Because As consciousness, I am that where all the localization appear. Therefore, that in which all the localizations appear is not localized everywhere, or else anywhere. Or it is localized everywhere, but not somewhere. So that is the experience of non-localization, if you will. By going to consciousness, experientially, we discover that consciousness is non-local, experientially. But it's not a delocalization. Unless you mean by delocalization the movement from the belief that I am localized as consciousness somewhere in this body to the experience of my non-locality, or from my non-localization. Then, of course, that would be a delocalization from here to anywhere and nowhere. What experiment can I do to be open to the experience that I am consciousness only? Well, first, what you are has to be always with you. That makes sense, that's a koan, but what you are has to be always with you. And see what is always with you. And you see that the only thing that fulfills this that meets this requirement is consciousness. Anything else is not always with you. A bodily sensation is not always with you. A sense perception is not always with you. A thought is not always with you. All of that comes and goes. The only thing that is always with you is the consciousness of all of that, and therefore the consciousness must be you. That's good, it's good, it's good. It's good. That's a transmission of the flame. the Olympic flame.
All right, Francis.
Did anybody switch it off in the... Was there a button pusher on the...
Hello? Yeah, okay. No, I was just testing the mic. I wasn't trying to be rude. All right, so universal consciousness is, I get that, but what's frustrating for me is why does universal consciousness... Okay, fine. I know you just answered that question. Why? There's no why. Okay, fine. But that's not really... Okay. I just don't get why it has to be localized in... I feel that if I'm universal consciousness, I have to have infinite perceptions. I have to have infinite, like all the perceptions that there are.
Precisely, you have them.
I have to see through every single body-mind.
Yeah.
Is that, that's what you mean by your body-mind is the whole world, or you are the whole world? Your body is the whole world.
So it's not one. So it's not only one body-mind. There are many body-minds. I'm not saying there is only one body-mind. I'm saying there are many body-minds. body-minds.
But I feel like I have to experience every single
You
one
are,
of them.
you are. Okay. What is the evidence that you don't?
Namely, because I'm not perceiving the flower from your angle, I'm only perceiving it from my angle.
No, you are perceiving it from my angle too. I can testify to that.
I cannot, I don't get that. I mean, I don't see it through your eyes or your body. Are you saying that I do? I don't.
Let me try to give you a metaphor for that, okay? The body, imagine that the body with its eyes is kind of a camera, an IP camera, right? So there are as many cameras looking at the flower as there are bodies, right? These IP cameras are connected to a control room where a security guard monitors the pictures from all the cameras. Now, when they created this thing, it was all technology. So the first setting in this room was that for each camera there was a small screen, a small flat screen, right?
Yeah.
And there was this security guard watching all the flat screen. Each screen represents a mind. Okay? Okay. Then they improved on it and they replaced all the small screen with a big screen, but the big screen was subdivided into, you understand, through the code, through the program, and fulfills the same function, just it was more economical and more versatile because you could add screens, you can split it in more screens instead of having to buy new, right? Yeah. And to connect all of that, you understand that, right? Yeah. So, and it is still the same security guard who monitors, right?
Yes.
That's the second model. The second model is what I call God's mind. God's mind is a big screen. So there is a possibility of two models, God's mind or just human minds, the previous model. In both cases, it is the same consciousness / security guard that monitors the entire thing. It works the same, right? For all practical purposes, whether there is God mind or not mind. And there is also a third option. And the third option is that for reliability purposes, on one wall, they kept all the small screens. On the other wall, they put the big screen, the big split screen. So simultaneously, you have the two systems running. Right? That's also a possibility, that you have simultaneously God's mind and human mind. So I offer you several choices, right?
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
But remember that the simplest model, in which there is no God's mind, is Occam's razor. In other words, it's a most efficient model because we don't. It suffices to say that it is one single consciousness watching through all the minds, But I have something to add to that to kind of drive this nail a little further.
All right.
It is this. You remember your breakfast this morning, if you had any.
Excuse me?
You remember your breakfast,
Right.
okay?
Yes.
And it is, you have no doubt that it was the same consciousness that was tasting the breakfast and which is hearing my words right now,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
In other words, you have no doubt, although your breakfast is no longer present, right?
Although my what is not?
Your breakfast is no longer present.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Right? You may have the memory of it, but
Just the memory.
it
right.
is no longer there, right? So you have really no way to know. But because your breakfast has totally disappeared.
Right.
I don't ask me where. I have some idea. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
But it's no longer, right? It has disappeared, right?
Right.
So you have no doubt, however, that it was the same consciousness.
Yes. I have no doubt.
Although the breakfast is not present. Why? Now, the breakfast is not present. Just that my perception of the flower is not present
Correct.
right now.
It's not present to me.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Right now, present to you, you have your perception of the flower.
Correct.
Right now, present to you, you have the memory, the recollection of your breakfast.
Right.
But your breakfast is not present.
Correct.
So in spite of the fact that it is not present, you have no doubt that it is the same consciousness that was the witness of the breakfast. Why? That which is good for the goose is good for the gander, and conversely. So, here, right now, right, my perception of the flower is not present. But you say, no, then I am not the one perceiving it. But how can you say then that you are the one perceiving the breakfast?
That's right. Yeah.
Because in both cases, it's not present.
You're right.
But what I have proven to you is that you can be perceiving something that is not present in your mind. So what you have to be open to, the possibility you have to be open to is that consciousness is in fact timeless.
Yeah.
And in this timelessness, everything is simultaneously present. And everything is reduced, if you will. It's like time collapses, and it's also like minds collapse. In one single creative.
The minds that collapse because there's one consciousness perceiving
There is
everything.
one reality.
One reality.
There is one reality that creates this. You know, if there is consciousness in this universe, it must be because this universe is conscious. You can tap dance on that as much as you can, but you still have to come to the conclusion that if there is consciousness in the universe, it means the universe is conscious through this consciousness. In other words, the universe uses consciousness minds, I mean sentient beings, but consciousness uses this vehicle to perceive itself. And there is no need for God's mind. There is no need. I mean, this universe can manifest God's mind as much as well as it manifests human minds, right? I'm not saying that's not possible. If I would say that, I would limit this God, right? So in this infinity, God can manifest anything. So I'm not saying that it is not the case, but what I'm saying is we don't know and we don't have to know. So human mind is very small to cannot have a correct map of this infinite territory. Now, I have something else to add to that also, because the question is often asked, well, if only, for instance, I could see your perception of the flower and not just mine, if only I could, then that would convince me that consciousness is universal.
Can you repeat that? If you could only see the perception
If you
of the
could
flower?
only see my perception of the flower,
Right.
then that would convince you that consciousness is universal, right? Because the argument you use is the reason why I have a problem with universal consciousness, namely doubts, is because I only see my perception of the flowers and I don't see yours.
Correct. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Meaning, if only I could see yours, then that would be evidence that consciousness is universal.
Or everyone's perceptions.
Yeah, but
Simultaneously.
let's start with
Right,
mine.
right, okay.
Let's
Right.
not be too ambitious. If only I could see yours, then that would convince me.
Yes.
Not true. Not true. You are fooling yourself by thinking that way. Why? Because that may happen. It's called telepathy. Telepathy is, you see what somebody else sees, or you think what somebody else is thinking, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is the interpretation of a telepathic event? Is it that there is only one consciousness?
No.
No. The interpretation is that there are two consciousnesses and they communicate somehow through some phenomenon called telepathy. In other words, if you are already convinced to be separate, nothing will satisfy you. So this claims that if only you could demonstrate to me through some telepathic event, I could be convinced, that's bullshit.
So what about experiencing everything simultaneously, which is what you're saying?
Yeah, but that would be bullshit also, because it would be, instead of being a point-to-point connection, it would be a multiple connection. It could be how do you call that? A spider network or a star, a node, and with all these things. But still, communication at a distance. I have a simple explanation. Nobody would satisfy someone who is in ignorance.
True. Thank you.
Francis, last week you during yoga you talked about that when you focus on a tension, it tends to exacerbate it.
When you focus on them because you have an agenda about them, yes.
Because
if you focus on tensions because you have an agenda about them, that you want to get rid of them, or for some reason, that you want to change something, then this very focusing on them, what was that? This very focusing on them exacerbates them, yes.
Because I've observed that in order to focus on a sensation or tension, it feels like the consciousness has to condense like into something small in the head, and then sends the attention down to the sensation, and it almost feels like it kind of squeezes it or something by sensing it, and then versus okay, sorry.
Yeah, but you have to release all of that to the space.
Gotcha. Anyway, so I was just going to say also that when consciousness is non-located, it's just it's a very different experience of what a sensation feels like.
Yeah, but you can have the sensations in at the same time know this borderlessness. The sensations, the presence of sensations is no obstacle to the borderlessness.
Mm-hmm.
The sensations have to be investigated only if they seem to be me, to have this feeling of me, and then they have to be, their true nature has to be ascertained, that they are bodily sensations. Once that has been done, now if there is a tension here to release, you release, and that is accomplished by releasing to the space. Every time you release a sensation to the space, it relaxes, if it is a muscle thing. If it is a cellular thing, also some form of relaxation takes place there also on the cellular level. It goes deeper, in other words, than just mere muscle relaxation. Of course, when there is muscle relaxation, it goes also to the cellular level. But there are two kinds of muscle relaxation. There is one which has to do with the nervous system. And there is another type which has to do simply with the organ, with the muscle. The one that has to do with the nervous system is simply by becoming aware of something. It's similar to if I'm aware that I've been holding that in my hand, that there is an effort, I say, oh, I relax, you see? Or I observe that my feet were like that because I was not feeling comfortable. Oh, the moment I notice it, I give through a nervous command, or stopping the command to hold on to the branches for dear life, as a monkey, I relax my toes, right? So that's immediate, and that is done through the nervous system. But there is another type, which is if a muscle has been for years or some fibers in a contracted state, and it has become chronic, then there are changes there on the cellular level that have nothing to do with the nervous system. But if you bring awareness in this area, somehow on the cellular level, a change will occur, and the muscle, but not immediately, but in a delayed fashion, will also find a form of relaxation. And sometimes we feel fibers that they go in boop, boop, the elimination of tension. It's a succession of letting go that happens independently from our will. It's a way for the body to go back to its natural condition. And I'm sure there are cellular transformation at deeper level, at the level of at the visceral level that take place.
Yeah, thank you for that. This can really only happen when awareness is non-localized.
What?
This can only happen when awareness is non-localized, right? Because when it condenses into a subject, it just seems like.
But awareness is never localized.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
We.
But okay, so because my experience,
the mind focuses on an object, but awareness is there,
right.
And the mind presents an object to the awareness, and this object can be very small, or the mind can be completely neutral, and anything that comes in is allowed. There is no selection. There is no.
Right. So, this illusion, this temporary illusion that gets created of a small subject, because it's an
Yeah.
illusion because it's not what's actually happening with
Yeah,
awareness.
and it's either a concept of me, my past, my name, my past history, everything which is on my passport, and my picture, etc.
Mm.
Or it is very relatively subtle sense of me in the head, in the chest. But these are bodily sensations.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just was trying to get clarity because it seems like if that process isn't happening, this illusion of the temporary, that the releasing or into the sensation of the space is just more of a natural. It's more naturally happening if the contraction only or the exacerbation only happens if there's that condensing of
Yes.
yeah.
And it's a release of the sense of me. You have it's every time you release the sense of me, it's a little bit like dying, you know.
Yeah. Thank you.
I recently got to have some surgery, so I got to be rendered unconscious. And I'm trying to kind of understand consciousness as a concept. And it occurred to me that consciousness is present now. Consciousness is present when this is in dreaming sleep. Consciousness is present, has to be present, dreamless sleep.
Yes,
Consciousness is present when I'm in surgery and they're
absolutely.
cutting holes in me. And consciousness is present when I die, when this thing dies
Yes,
and is burned.
yes,
So it's incredibly different than mindfulness or something like that.
absolutely. And
It's almost like mindfulness seems like bringing the separate self to bear.
yes. The mistake we make is to believe that consciousness is consciousness of something. And precisely is precisely the opposite, is that consciousness is at its purest in the absence of something. So in ignorance, we believe that if there is nothing, consciousness disappears. So the feeling is, if there is nothing, I'm going to die. So we hold on to things. We want things to perpetuate themselves. If there is nothing, if there is going to be nothing, we freak out. So we immediately create something, like doing that, you know, or singing a song in the head, just doing something, a mantra or something repetitive, you know, just to have something rather than nothing, because we have the feeling that if there is nothing, we die. Whereas in wisdom, we know that if there is nothing, we are at our finest hour. So then we gladly go into this absence of perception. So then we allow for every thought, for every sensation to die. We don't try to hold on to it for dear life, because we know that it is precisely the most enjoyable thing is when we go to silence. So the fear of silence, there is a 180 a U-turn that we take from fear of silence to love, and the silence of this pure consciousness. You know?
And it seems like it's somewhat a gradual change of direction.
No,
think
because we have first a glimpse of that,
Yeah.
and this glimpse knows itself, and then we go back to it because we don't fear it any longer. We seek it, in fact. But then seeking it is, again, a mistake, because that's a mistake of the yogin, to seek the consciousness without object, because everything we perceive is already consciousness. So it doesn't matter whether it's with object or without objects, because everything is the same reality. So then we don't seek the disappearance of an object.
Right. With this just occurs.
We are
This-
just fine with what is at every moment. So that's a natural state. Everything is, all is well and unfolding as it should.
Thank you.
That's some things that, what's his name? Robert Adams would say. All is well and unfolding as it should.
So beliefs need to be seen for what they are, I guess. But what about the belief that, so I'm from New York, right? So that New York, that there is a place right now called New York, and that it's not just a memory. How do I deal with such beliefs?
Well, it is not different from the belief that there is an armoire behind you.
Exactly, right. So
Because you have seen the armoire and you know there is, with a high level of reliability, that there is an armoire behind you. Just as you have seen New York City and you know with a high level of reliability that there is such a place, with the Lincoln Bridge at Carnegie Hall and the Pierre Hotel and and the nice boutiques on the 6th Avenue.
Fifth Avenue. Yeah. So what?
6 is not bad, no? Fifth is for tourists.
I still have to believe in it, right?
No, it's different. A belief, in my book, a belief is something for which there are no supporting facts.
Okay.
In other words, in my book, a belief is gratuitous.
Is what?
Gratuitous?
Oh. Okay, fine.
For instance, let's assume I'm told that there are little green men with antennas living on the other side of the moon. I haven't seen them. There are no evidence. Even if someone shows me pictures, I will have some doubts.
All right.
You see what I mean? So then that would be this type of belief, a belief for which there is no supporting evidence. Another example is a belief in Santa Claus, although there is some evidence because many people believe in there's this guy in the winter at Macy's, you can have your picture taken with him. So there is a beginning of evidence there. So the belief in Santa Claus is not absolutely gratuitous because there are some element of evidence. Whether these elements of evidence have 4 legs to stand on in a court of law, I don't know. I don't know, if your bank account is overdrawn, that if you go to the manager and says, yes, Santa Claus stole my check, and he's the one who wrote the checks, stole my checkbook, and he's the one who, I'm not sure that is going to help you much.
So what you're talking about is that there are beliefs that really stand in the way of knowing the truth.
Let me tell
yeah.
you, there is only one belief.
One belief.
One belief is the belief that consciousness is limited. That's
Okay.
all. That it is dependent upon the body, that it is limited. That it is localized. Anything that limits it.
Okay.
Because where is the belief? What's the evidence?
Right.
So we believe consciousness is limited, but there is no supporting evidence at all, unlike Santa Claus. There is no Macy's there. So then that's really a pure belief. Now, what a pure belief is, it's an exercise in freedom. You see, because nobody compels us to believe that we are, there is nobody, but no facts compel us to believe that it is true. So if we believe it to be true, it's just out of the enjoyment of our freedom. It's very similar to, in order to enjoy a movie, you have to believe that it is true, right?
Right.
So, but nobody forces you.
Right.
You see, you are the one deciding, yeah, I'm going to decide that it is true for the sake of the enjoyment, for fun, right?
Right.
So then you don't feel that you are victimized by watching the movie because you choose it. You chose to go to the theater, you spend the $12. You don't feel I'm victimized, even if the movie sucks, right? Unlike Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Okay. You watched it, right? Well, I mean, I was disappointed. There were only, what, four people? Five watching Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I mean, and those who have seen it like 3 years ago or earlier, you need a booster.
So the same could apply to daydreaming as well. We want to daydream, and we get lost in our daydreams because we want to enjoy our daydreams. Would you say?
Sure, it's a free country. If the boss is okay with that.
All right, thank you.
I remember I had a secretary. She was a master daydreamer. She was so good. She was so good. And she was also in love with truth, but she was a romantic. And so she was a student of my teacher, so I hired her. And at the office, her favorite spot was not behind the desk, but it was at the window. And so she was there, you know, and it was Allée de Tourny in Bordeaux. It's a very nice street with beautiful 18th century building, very beautiful. And he was there, but she was not really watching. She was romanticizing, I don't know.
Francis, to continue with this thought, and I really don't mean to ask you another why question, but one of the things that's so seductive and powerful of the illusion is that it's so reliable.
Yes. You mean, by reliability, you mean over time, consistency over time.
Yes, and that I believe there's a New York City, and I expect to get off an airplane and find it.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I mean, consistency over time. It doesn't.
And also there are laws of physical reality that
Yeah.
we've discussed, yet this is all the illusion.
Well, it's. When we use the word illusion, is in reference to the underlying reality. So, and we use the analogy of the daydream, of the night dream, which when seen from the vantage point of the day experience, of the day, of the waking state, reveals its illusory quality because it has absolutely disappeared. The elements of the night dream have absolutely disappeared. They are nowhere to be found. Right? That's a sign of its illusory quality. For instance, if you are afraid during a night dream because a lion is running after you with a big open mouth, then you wake up and the lion is a total illusion. But your heart racing, or your sweat, I don't know, the leftovers of the fear are not in, so your fear was not an illusion. You see what I mean? So there are elements of the night dreams that cross over to the daily experience. But what is an illusion are all the elements of the night dream that have absolutely disappeared when in the waking state. So an illusion is something which is not a reality of its own, because it can absolutely disappear. So that which is real is that which can never disappear. Right? So whatever we perceive is an illusion in relation to its underlying reality, for the very simple reason that it disappears from moment to moment. So the reliability, it is not that reliable, because as Heraclitus once said, we never swim twice in the same river. Therefore, although it seems that some things are moving, and other things like the mountain or the houses are solid and not changing, everything changes. If we could look at matter with a very powerful microscope, we would see a lot of agitation and change there. And if we could take a picture of this house, every year, it would be a very short film, and we'll see the house moving, right? So everything that seems solid, in fact, is not. Therefore, nothing has continuous existence. Therefore, in that sense, what is the reality of that which disappears absolutely? Because it disappears absolutely. From moment to moment it disappears absolutely, like the elements of the dream. We just forget it conveniently to play the game. We play the game as if the house was always the same
But why does this thing that disappears have such internal consistency?
Because even in the night dreams, there is an element of consistency. Because if you had absolute inconsistency, then you would have absolute chaos. There wouldn't be any story, there wouldn't be any... From one moment to the next moment, there is nothing that... There will be nothing that connects one moment to the next. Each moment will be totally disconnected. So it will be like white noise or something like that. And of course, there will be no interesting story. It will be a maximum level of entropy, if you will, total disorder. And therefore no story, no nothing. So we need an element of order, of structure, and of correlation over time, consistency over time. The difference between the waking dream and the night dream is that the night dream, being of a much shorter duration, the laws are different than the laws of physics there, and the consistency is not as consistent. It evolves more quickly. You can start as a man, then next moment you have wings, right? Next moment you get married. Next moment you are an elephant. You see? But for a while, as you fly, for a short moment there is consistency. You see, and
so in some sense, do we impose structure on the white noise? Do we impart structure to the white noise?
There is order in the universe. That's all I can say. There is order. So there is information, and we could say that there is conservation of information, but even that I don't buy, because I think that creativity injects new levels of information into the universe. So even the law of conservation of information is true on a certain level, black holes and all of that stuff. But I think that creativity comes from a different source. Artificial intelligence will never reach creativity. It's still processing, but it's not creativity. This friend, Edward Frankel, he's a mathematician. He's a professor at UC Berkeley. And he was invited by scientists or IT people, I guess in the Silicon Valley, to look at artificial intelligence. And he observed that basically in artificial intelligence, all the processes boil down to one single mathematical process, which is, if you will, an optimization process. It's like a little bit like if you have a surface, like a mountain or a hill, and you try to find which is the trajectory on this hill that the water is going to use as it goes down. And it is a trajectory that at every moment would have the maximum slope. So it's not going to be straight. It depends on the general topography of the hill. So all the methods of optimization that are used in artificial intelligence are based on one single mathematical object or process. out of the extraordinary amount of mathematical ideas and objects that have been discovered by man through this injection of intelligence. So, therefore, through this process, artificial intelligence could not possibly discover all the rest of mathematics. You understand, right? Because this, as my teachers to say, the plus cannot come out of the less. More cannot come out of less. So out of this very simple, limited mathematical process, no matter how powerful the computer that are used, that you cannot discover the rest of mathematics, and then you cannot write Mozart symphonies, and you cannot paint Cézanne's paintings, etc. You know, and write Shakespeare theatrical plays. So food for thoughts, but this intrusion of creativity in the universe is something very beautiful.
Indeed. Thank you.
So when you observe your teacher having several useless habits, would it be a good observation to maybe experiment in having useless habits as well?
If you have fun, and if you are not harming anybody, unless perhaps, hitting someone with a tennis ball, your opponent, on the butt, that's all. There is a game in tennis, practice serve, where you practice serve, and the other guy is on the other hand and is in this position. And you aim for it after the bounce. Then you take turns. It's a boys' game. Girls don't do that. It's too bad.
Maybe some girls do.
Oops. I said something that was politically not correct here. I'm losing my congregation. Yes.
Another thing, to increase the turnout for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, it could be that like a Sunday matinee during the retreat could be a possibility.
Matinee? No, why not? There are other nice movies, such as Dean Spanley. Dean Spanley, a beautiful movie. All of Me. As It Is in Heaven. It's up to you.
Mic check. Francis, you were talking a little bit about creativity, and I guess this is always something that I just feel like when I'm at my most creative, it's really more effective stealing. Like I'll steal something that I see in nature or in people, and then I kind of make it my own. So it's, I don't know, it feels more like recycling than it does, like an actual creative, like in its truest sense,
Normally, a teacher of non-duality, the teaching has to be an example of creativity. The most important is not what is said in the teaching, is the creativity of it, because it reveals the source. So the creativity is not a redigesting of existing thing, it's something else. It's something new. It's always new. But new is not sufficient. It has to be new, but it has to be intelligent, beautiful, funny, whatever, but free. It has to give us this. It's always about truth, love, beauty, and a few other things. Otherwise, it's a reorganization. I take this from there, I take that from there, and I put it together and I create a new thing. No. That's a recipe, and it's a recipe for disaster.
Sorry, so are we talking apples and oranges here, like the creativity of a teacher versus the creativity of an artist?
I'm talking about true creativity, be it of a teacher or of an artist. It's not it has to be new. It has to be new. And it is necessary for it to have this newness to it. It is not sufficient to have the newness. It has to be new, but it has to be beautiful, intelligent, loving, funny, free.
Right. I don't know. I mean, when I'm at my best, it does feel beautiful, intelligent, free. But I guess there's this whole notion of, there's nothing new under the sun, right? That, I don't know.
That's a problem.
Huh?
That's a problem.
So what, is that like just a belief that I have that?
Yeah. Get rid of it. Because if it were true, there wouldn't be quantum mechanics, Mozart's music, Einstein, general relativity, discovery of DNA, and so many other things.
No, this microphone smells awful. It has nothing to, I'm not sick. I'm not sick. Just want to make it. I think it probably smells stronger with a different flame.
For instance, you could say, okay, there are, if you take The Tempest by Shakespeare, you say, okay, there are, 20,000 words in it, okay?
Yeah.
20,000 words. Well, are you listening, or am I wasting my time while you are making the clown? Okay. Any other question? Come on. If you take, for instance, The Tempest by Shakespeare, there are 20,000 words, let's say, and each word is on average 5 letters, right? So it's 100,000 letters. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, right? and they are put in all kinds of order. So there is a mathematical formula that gives you the exact number, which is huge, right, of combination of all of those letters. One of these combination is going to be the tempest, right? Out of zillions of course. So you can have a computer write all the possible works, most of which would be gibberish, right? And you can say, the computer can write the tempest, among many other things. The problem is, out of the many other things, who chooses the tempest? So you could say there is nothing new under the sun, you know. After all, any work is just letters in a certain order. So there is nothing new.
Yeah, I think I was looking at it from that, but thank you.
It goes back to always the same problem. Where does the value come from? Because when you choose a tempest among, because of course there will be a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, but there will be also a lot of work that are comprised of 20,000 characters, of 20,000 words that make sense. A lot of them. But the computer didn't create them. You see? Because the problem is in the selection. And the selection is when you say this, the tempest has value, that doesn't. Where does the value come from?
Hi. I was daydreaming while you was talking, and I was having this conversation that you're talking to yourself, or that I'm right now talking to myself. And that what I call Alec usually, or what those people call Alec, is actually all of us, because I cannot be without that. And then, just for fun, I was trying to find where does the witness, is from where the security guard is witnessing, let's say. Because we talk about the source and this thing, and it was either kind of everywhere at the same time, like this kind of idea of non-localization, but which is the kind of tiring for my mind. Or it was like coming to a very small point that I cannot know where it is, and suddenly, again, it was like everywhere, but which is not everywhere at the same time. It's kind of annoying for the mind to get that, and I guess it's not possible to get this idea with the mind.
Yeah, because the mind only has pictures that are maps, and they are not the territory. What we do with the mind, we use maps that help us eliminate other maps that we previously held to be true, to be the territory. And when we have removed all the maps, which remains is the territory.
Okay, thank you.
And no map will ever replace the territory. So we have to understand that. But a map can help remove another map that understand that another map was simply pretending to be the territory or to be a perfect representation of the territory.
Yeah, actually, at the same time, it is making every map and useless and useful
Yes,
at the same time.
yes. But here, for our purpose, the only usefulness of the map is to show the inadequacy of all maps. So that we just remain with only the territory. Because we are the territory.
Thank you.
Francis, continue in the field of creativity. For example, like how to be open, like really open, like for example, to write a poem or a song. Because in the afternoon I was with Fred and we wanted to sing a song, but we didn't find any song in common. So he started to play his guitar with no reason, and I started to sing with no reason, and that was so cool because a song came out really nice and I enjoyed it, but I lost it because didn't write, and then I started to get really excited, said, oh, I know, let's write a song. So I said it, and I wrote the 2 sentences, and then I was so excited that, okay, now. And then I don't know if I applied pressure it, I don't know, but something blocked. And I was trying, the more harder I was trying, the worse was getting. Like, this 2 sentences was really beautiful sentence. Like I said, creativity. And then the other was like, oh, what am I doing, you know?
Sometimes we cannot record things. I mean, one day I was about to wake up, and I saw a series of what we call bas-reliefs. These are these carvings, you see, that are on the wall, and they represent figures. And they were so beautiful, and they come one after the other, and they were so beautiful. But I'm not a painter or a carver, or they are lost forever. I enjoy them in the moment. They will.
But this, I'm not a painter, comes from practice, or comes from the talent that some have and some others don't have, like a permission from consciousness? I don't know.
In arts, there are several things. There is talent, skills, and love. The most important is love. To really love this form of expression, to love it. And then the talent is something which is given to us at birth, you know, by the, what do you call les fées? Comment on dit les fées? The fairies, you know, by the muse. No, the fairies we say in
The
French.
trees.
Yeah. So the talent is given to us at birth. The skills are acquired, right? So the most important is the love, which corresponds to the vocation. Second, the talent, and then the skills. To a certain extent, the skills can compensate for the talent. But so you can love tennis. You can be too short, that's a lack of talent. And then you can try to compensate that by working hard, but you never have a serve as powerful as a guy who is 6'5". So, so it's hard to be a professional. So you have to consider to that, but that which matters. So now there are art forms in which talent and love are more important than skills. Classical music as a performer, skills are very important. You need to acquire them. It's tough. Painting, for instance, you need love and you need talent. Skills are relatively easy to acquire. There are great painters that started when they were like in their 40s. I think Gauguin started, for instance, to paint late. There might be other painters. Because the skills are not as important as talent and love. Creativity comes from love.
Yeah, because I've heard like most of the pianists, like Mozart, I heard that they drink with the symphony, and then they wake up and the music's ready. Like.
But musicians is very particular because the difference in talent is huge. The story goes that there was this piece that was sung at the Sixtine Chapel, and it was, I don't know how many different voices were, like 16 voices by the choir, 16 different voices. And it was prohibited for musicians to go there and to take notes of the music as they were singing, because they were skilled musicians. So Mozart was there, he was young, came back and wrote. So, I mean, the talent of some people is absolutely mind-blowing, literally mind-blowing. An example, the opposite is as a painter, Cézanne, 0 skills, almost 0 talent, but huge love. And he's one of the greatest.
So in my case that I want to write a song, do you suggest keep practicing or just wait until you really get a download?
You see, when I designed, with Laura, we designed this house, I think I drew 100 floor plans of this house. Obviously, I trashed 99 of those. I kept only 1.
Got it. Thank you.
So sometimes the creativity is not a process of adding stuff, but rather a process of eliminating stuff. That which is not good, you eliminate. You have an idea? No, let's not go. You have an idea? Perhaps. Let's go on with this idea. No. Another idea. Up until it clicks. So it's not that it comes out of the blue like that, No, that's wishful thinking. It's not like, 3 boys get together, have a very powerful guitar amplifier, one has very powerful drums, another one bass guitar, right? And the other one a regular guitar, right? And here you have a trio, and it makes a lot of noise in the garage. But it's not necessarily music.
Another thought on creativity that in my work, I'm just, when you're talking about creativity, I mean, Mozart's kind of a long reach for a lot of us, but I was reading something in a scientific journal that someone was doing with some plants. They discovered, it's kind of cool, that if you have plants that are not the same, when their roots touch, they're like, who's that over there? And they respond and they try to outgrow one another. And I read that and I went, whoa, we could try that in strawberries. You know, I mean, you could, because we plant monocultures of strawberries. I mean, that's how they do it. But if you planted different varieties together, you might get some kind of, you know, I mean, there's a lot
Competition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, competition and kind of inspiration maybe or something. But that, so the creativity in my case was just going, oh, that could work in strawberries. It was just knowing the turf.
That's creativity.
You know, it doesn't have to be. I was Mozart. I mean, anyway, but it was cool.
It's
it was cool.
this moment of bingo.
Yeah, it was a bingo. It was a little bingo. Bingette. Small bingo.
Could you speak a little bit about the idea of free will and that we have control over what happens?
Yeah, the question is, do we choose our thoughts? Or do they come to us as minds? Do our minds choose the thoughts that appear? Do we have control of our thoughts, in other words? It seems to be the case, but if we look more carefully, we see that they just happen like the weather, in fact. And like external events, they happen. In other words, there are no internal events that we choose and external events that happen. Everything happens, both internally and externally. And it makes sense because this body is part of the universe. So what it just happens here as it happens out there. Because there is no separation, so the happening is global. So a thought that happens is a cosmic event, just as the rain or... So we don't choose the thoughts any more than we choose the rain. We simply believe that we do. We believe that we do because they appear in us, they exist in us, they disappear in us. Therefore, they are made of us. They are our thoughts. But regarding the rain, because we believe to be this separate body, the rain appears out there, happens out there, therefore it's not my rain. It's her rain, talking about God, right? Or nature, whatever. But the thoughts, because they appear in what I consider to be me, they are my thoughts. Her rain, my thoughts. But in fact, that's bogus. Because it's all her rain and her thoughts. Or it's all my rain and my thoughts. Because I am her. I am she. Right? So, the mistake is to say, her rain, my thoughts. What is correct is, her rain, her thoughts, my rain.
So when we have a thought and we choose to act upon it. At least for me, I have a tendency to be like, oh yes, I did that. Like, that was of my doing. Is that completely accurate?
As a person, we do nothing. Because as a person, we decide nothing. Because a decision comes as a thought. Since as a person, we don't create the thoughts, we don't create the decisions. As a person, we have no free will, really. We have the illusion of a free will. We have the illusion of a limited free will, but we don't have real free will. As the universe, whatever arises, be it a thought, or be it a decision, or be it the rain, emanates out of ourselves. Therefore, it's our creation. Therefore, it emanates out of our freedom. That's why because we don't have any trouble accepting that the thoughts are our thoughts. That we have this impression that we create them, that we choose them. And we claim them to be mine. We don't claim the rain to be ours. This separation between the body and the world is the problem. It's duality, if you will. There is no such duality, in fact, in nature. Nature is one. It creates thoughts in each of us, and it creates rain between us. The beauty of this is that if I, as a separate person, I don't create my thoughts, I am not guilty of my past mistakes, right? As a person. But then if as a person I'm not guilty of my own mistakes, people around me are not guilty either. What applies to me applies to others. So it's beautiful because it liberates me from guilt, and at the same time it enables me to show it cannot even be called forgiveness, you see, or mercy or whatever, because it's so natural. It's natural forgiveness because there is nobody guilty out there. So there is nobody that needs in need of being forgiven. You know? It's instantaneous, it's automatic forgiveness, if you will. It's beautiful. It's just that you don't see anybody guilty around you. It's a general verdict of not guilty.
We were talking about love. Curiosity and love is really the same thing.
What?
Curiosity.
Interest, yes. Curiosity. I don't know what's in English. Curiosity is expressed as interest. Also, yes. Yeah.
Anyway, I was thinking in French.
Because sometimes it means strange. No? Yeah. So, interest, yes, interest is love. Yeah. To be interested in the truth is to love the truth.
I mean, also like what you were
To
just
be
saying.
interested in the girl. Not always love.
So forgiveness is automatic. But what if somebody does something horribly bad? You know.
But you put the guy in jail. that's okay. Society has the right to protect. The guy is not guilty, but has to be put in jail for the sake of society.
So hard feelings, grudges.
No, that's
Somebody,
stupid. That's
you know,
stupid. That's
God
stupid.
forbid, kills
It's,
some of your.
it's unhealthy to grudges and hard feelings. That's ignorance always. You have to eliminate that from your repertoire. This type of song, not good. Not good for your health.
What about like traumatic situations, traumatic experiences that one feels that they have no control over?
Yes.
Memory, yeah.
So traumatic experience you have no control over,
And aren't grudges natural? Let them
No.
be, in a way.
no. Animals have, for instance, have no grudges. They can bite you if you aggress them, but they have no grudges. It's different. It's natural sense of protection. You can kill someone in self-defense, but no grudges, no hard feelings.
Okay, well, maybe, okay, fine. It's not natural to be angry at somebody who vandalizes someone's property, for example. Somebody scratches your Maserati, for example. What would you do?
No, that would be... there will be exception to some rule.
See what I mean?
No, because how can I say? There is such a thing as outrage.
Okay.
Outrage is a reaction when someone does something which is obviously comes up from deep ignorance, right? And you are sending the message, well, that was a mistake. And if this person is kind of deaf, you have to pump up the volume, and so that the message can be communicated. And this pumping up of the volume expresses, you use the forms of anger, but you are not really angry at the person. But sometimes that's the only way. It's like with your kids, you say, Alex, shut the door. Alex, the door, please. Alex, shut the door. Alex, the door. Alex, damn it!
Wait, so the last part wasn't done in anger?
It's not anger, it's efficiency in communication.
Yeah, all right. So I have an excuse if I ever get angry.
Yeah, you
I
say,
can call it
it's
efficiency
outrage.
of communication.
Yeah, no, but this understanding that there is nobody, that everything that happens is universal. Nobody does anything to you.
Correct.
That's very important. The windshield of my car, I need to replace it. Am I happy? No. Maserati windshields are quite expensive. And it has to be done, and I'm lazy. So, but I'm not angry.
Right.
To continue on the
Right.
example, the
Correct.
metaphor you chose to address.
Correct, yes. Yes. Yeah, that clarifies everything. Thank you very much.
Okay, wow, it's late.